NBS Frontline.
In Parliament, the discussions are tough as government seeks to return some of her agencies to their mother ministries. Earlier this week, one of the most prominent ones on the chopping block was the Uganda National Roads Authority, UNRA.
The current staffing levels of the three entities include a total of 1,544 members of staff, both permanent, contingency, contract, senior management, earning a total of 71 billion shillings. The ministry, on the other hand, has 544 members of staff. So UNRA is in effect bigger than the ministry.
A passionate rejection of calls to take the Kagina lead authority back to the Ministry of Works followed.
That UNRA portfolio has grown to over 2 trillion per year, which may not be well handled within the current confines of Ministry of Works and Transport. Right Honourable Speaker, members, I beg to move that Uganda National Road Authority Act Repeal Bill 2024 be rejected in its totality.
You can see now on the road, Masaka Road, the work UNRA's people are there. By the end of the day, people will have to pass. It is possible, you can see. But if it was Minister of Works, even himself, having an accounting officer presiding over a big empire will not have the best of it.
Others like National Information Technology Authority, NITA, have survived already amidst rumors of bribery to save some agencies.
Is a bill seconded?
While painful, rationalization envisages cost savings of up to 1 trillion shillings, and the cash-strapped government will go to any lengths to see it succeed. Still, Parliament has put up a spirited fight to save some agencies. Agencies were created to promote efficiency, and fears are high that the cost savings made through rationalization could be wiped away with the loss of efficiency. Worse still, the taxpayer would have to pay heavily for the cost of a bloated government.
But ever since they put a provision, they are not doing anything ever since.
While Cabinet seems to be clear-minded on the rationalization, could Parliament be jeopardizing the process? With the process resolving into an apparent clash between the executive and the legislature, what is the fate of the much-awaited rationalization? This is The Frontline.
NBS Frontline.
A very good evening and welcome to this edition of The Frontline on NBS TV. My name is Charles Mwangu Shampagi. And tonight, the pulling of ropes between the executive on one hand and the parliament or the legislature over rationalization of government agencies and authorities continues. Salacious allegations about bribery from some entities to save them. That the executives in these entities really feel their organizations must be saved by Parliament. Those allegations of bribery coming up, but also justification. Can government actually save money by reducing the number of agencies and authorities that it has created? The other big question is, what was the thinking at the time of the creation of some of these entities? Did government have a good idea, a good intention that it failed to manage and ran out of control? Can it actually, once it has exploded, can government afford to put the genie back in the bottle? This is what appears, and we'll be interrogating some of these questions, looking at some of the agencies that have been saved by Parliament so far, and those that have been let go and are going to be merged back into their mother ministries. Were they even necessary? If they were necessary, will taking them back help in the execution of the duties they were supposed to be executing? Just returned from which is which now? I need to be clear. Someone sent me a message and said he'd been in some part of the country, but let me skip that for now. Let me introduce from Kira municipality. Until May next year, still a member of the FDC, yeah. And a frontliner. Yes? Up to. Yes, up to May. May next year, not May this. Next year. The Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda is a frontliner. Very nice to have you, sir.
Yes, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
We have all the way from Napak, the Honorable Nakuti Faith.
Good evening.
Very nice to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
Napak is in the Karamoja sub-region, and I've been told that some of the justification that you members of parliament are considering is which agency serves which region of the country. There are agencies that serve interests of particular regions of this country that needed to be saved in terms of what. This is what I'm telling you, this is what I've heard. That
I thought these agencies are supposed to serve the whole country.
They serve the whole country, but there are particular areas where their impact is more felt because of what they produce. You don't grow any coffee in Karamoja, for example, do you?
We have started.
You have started?
I am one of the farmers.
Okay. You grow some cotton as well?
Yes.
Yes, you are growing a lot of cotton under...
We're growing cotton in parts of
under Uganda Prison Services, I think.
Yes, we also grow, even private individuals are growing it in Karenga.
Okay. The old man of the clan, he also just returned from Kanyandai village, somewhere in Rutete sub-county, Karole district.
Yes.
Andrew Mojuni Mwenda, very nice to have you.
I'm very pleased to be back on Frontline.
Were you in Ginger with PLU or in Fort Portal at the party for 50 years? Where exactly were you?
Everywhere.
Have you been?
Everywhere, like UPC.
And from Mulanda and from Kapelebyong, I have Ofono Opondo, a frontliner. Very nice to have you, sir. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Charles. I'm from Mulanda, but now finding my feet ground zero in Kapelebyong in Alungamosmos. There are parts of this country that are emerging, and if we go asleep, opportunities will pass us. I want to encourage people, especially young people, to go out. If you go to Nakapiripirit and you look at the rolling valleys of Nakapiripirit.
You want to shift there? Okay.
They are like Switzerland.
But I'll tell you another reason why OO is in Kapelebyong. OO wrote a very beautiful article that I personally shared, and I saw many people sharing on social media groups about that age when you cannot be where you are, that you must plan about retirement. And he said, when all the nice things go away from you, you must be ready. So I think he's been planning, the interpretation has been he's been preparing to retire. But in this country, we don't talk about retirement.
No, it is the mind. And you convince yourself, yes, the people you work with or the person who appoints me, you like me, President Museveni, it is up to me to persuade him that indeed I've done good service, and I don't have to be in the station at the media center to serve the country or even to serve the government. I can serve the government as a private citizen. For example, if I'm a successful entrepreneur in Kapelebyong, employing 50, 100 people every day, giving them 5,000 shillings every day, I think that's a better service to the country than probably what many of us are doing around offices in Kampala. Yeah.
Okay. We will be following your journey and trying to learn from you and see whether you can start entrepreneurship at 60 plus, whether that is actually...
Age is just a number.
Let me start with you, Andrew. Andrew, you're on your phone, and I remember you telling us not to be on the phone when we are discussing serious things.
Yes.
Let me start from the very basic question. There's been this whole debate about rationalization of government agencies and authorities. The bigger question, actually, rationalization is a word that many people may not easily appreciate. But to look again at some of these merging, doing away with, removing some of these authorities. My bigger question is, you've seen the pulling of the rope between the executive and parliament now, that's been going on. It's a debate that we've been having for the last few years. What is the rationale from where you stand?
Well, first of all, I should tell you that I, as an old man of the clan, I think I'm the person who started a campaign to rationalize government agencies in 2005 and 6. I worked with a man called Godbat Mushabat Code, and we did research on the proliferation of government spending. If you look at my TED talk, which I gave in July 2006, these are the issues I was raising. That the government had been expanding in different directions. One, there was decentralization and the creation of multiple districts from 33, now they are 145. 146. Two, there was a mushrooming of commissions, authorities, and semi-autonomous government bodies on every arm and leg of the existence of every ministry. And then three, there was growth in the size of parliament, in the size of presidential advisors, in the size of cabinet. So this was at that time called public administration spending. It was eating a huge component of the budget. So when General Saleh and actually Ramadan Gobi started this idea, they started criticizing this, what they call agencyfication of government, that practically every activity of government had to have an agency to implement it. I think they were right. In fact, if you look at the study I did for our code, I was arguing that what NRM was, the mistake that the NRM was making is reform by addition rather than reform by transformation. If there was a challenge in revenue collection, rather than transform the bureaucracy in order to be effective, they would say, okay, the bureaucracy is corrupt and incompetent, we are going to create an agency called the Uganda Revenue Authority. Okay, the Ministry of Finance is therefore, that docket is taken to another agency. Practically every Ministry of Tourism, they create Uganda Wildlife Authority. Every single thing they are creating an authority. Now, I believe that in certain strategic areas like revenue collection, like investment promotion, this was a good idea. But the more it was implemented, at one time we had 115 agencies and semi-autonomous government bodies. It just became too much. It shifted power and resources from ministries into these agencies. So government now came and said, we must rationalize. When they started rationalizing, what I felt, and this is my criticism, General Salim Saleh and I have had a lot of disagreements on this. They decided to throw away the baby with the bathwater. Because I'll give you an example. Up until around about 2013, 2012, Uganda was collecting about 2 billion a year from registration of companies by a department in the Ministry of Justice. So they created Uganda Registration Services Bureau.
URSB.
URSB. By 2018, URSB was collecting 52 billion. The creation of an agency really transformed
the registration process, the formalization of business.
So the registration process moved from being 3 months to 1 day, and revenue to government moved from 2 billion to 52 in a space of about 4 to 5 years. There was a man called Bemanya who was the head, yes. So there was
Bemanya Twebaze.
Yes. In fact, so that is one. Then government
I think now their projection for URSB, they're collecting about 80 billion. They should be going to 90 billion. And I think
I should tell you, if government of Uganda actually expanded their mandate or enlarged their budget, you know, although they collect this money, it does not go to the account, it goes to the central treasury.
The consolidated account.
Then the treasury allocates the money in the budget, because if they were, the URSB was given money to increase the number of staff, be present in all districts, they could do more than double the revenue, while their own cost would go up by about 30%. And the government has not done that. So I felt that in that specific case of URSB, that was good policy, it was the right thing to go. If you look at 2019, UWA, Uganda Wildlife Authority, that year collected about 127 billion. Its budget was about 87 billion. So it was earning more
than it was spending.
So if you are carrying out a reform of government and saying you want to reduce expenses of government, there are certain agencies that were revenue generating that needed to be retained, and those that are scavenging and unimportant, then you could shed those ones off. Because remember that they recommended UWA should go back to the Ministry of Tourism. But the Ministry was saying we don't want them here, they're doing very well. URSB should go back to the Ministry of Justice. Let me give you another example. They said IRS, Insurance Regulatory Authority, IRA, should now be taken to the central bank. But IRA is not funded by the government of Uganda. It's funded by private insurance companies. And it is collecting enough fees for its survival that it is even putting up a 15-story building on Nakasero Road in Nakasero. So I felt that the policy was good. The details of implementation were, they made mistakes. Another strategic mistake they made is to say they are going to close down UNRWA and make it a department into the Ministry of Works. That was a strategic error. Why? UNRWA, when they created this as a special agency, shifted most of the engineers out of Ministry of Works. Now it went into this specialized agency. They were given special salaries, and they built strong capabilities. In 2015, Alan Kajuna came in, fired 100% of the staff. When she was hiring, hired only maybe 10%. So all the accumulated knowledge, skills, institutional memory, and all this was lost. Then she started rebuilding it afresh, and she did an incredible job of rebuilding it. Once it had reached its best levels of, you know, you look at intangibles. For example, I think Alan had succeeded in creating this ethos in the minds of her staff that we are the agency that is responsible for the transformation of the country through its infrastructure. And she had put in place systems and processes that had made this agency really a shining star of bureaucratic competence, and people were motivated and stuff like that. Then they come and say, no, we are now going to abolish you and take you back to the ministry. Now let me show you the contradiction of that. These people are earning salaries of maybe 12 to 15 million shillings. In the ministry, salaries of engineers are 1.2,800,000. Oh, they have improved. So if you take these people back, how many of those engineers?
Isn't that exactly the problem, Andrew? Because I think that's been one of the major contradictions. You have two sets of people working for the government of Uganda earning completely different salaries. Same training levels, they have gone to the same institutions. The only difference is the people at the ministry are ideally supposed to be supervising those in the agency, in the authority or the agency. And I think that's been one of the biggest fights.
But you see,
how does the permanent secretary, until they increase their salaries the other day, supervise Alan Kajina, who's earning 3 times more than he does, or maybe 40 times more than he earns?
So Charles, that is the problem of my critique earlier. The critique was that, one, this is reform by addition rather than reform by transformation, and it created this problem. But now you are compounding this problem by getting 1,100 engineers, saying you're taking them back to ministry on low salary scales. Many of them are going to leave, and you will therefore lose the competencies you had built. You see, so you have spawned all these organizations, created a highly motivated staff, and then demoralized them. So you can see the contradiction in which we are. If I was the one, there are many agencies I would have done away with, many others I would have merged. Like merging UNRWA with the Uganda Railways was a good idea. But to disband UNRWA and take them back, you know, UNRWA has a budget of about 12% of the national budget, of 4 trillion this year, against a budget of, what is our budget this year? It's about 36 trillion. Because although they say 54 trillion, I should tell you, it's misleading because there's about 8 trillion which is rolled over debt. It's not that money is available in the government spend, it's just debt being rolled over. Remember, when the government borrows every year, it does not pay everybody. It doesn't pay the back. It borrows from Opondo to pay Semuju. So don't count that as part of government spending. Then there is the interest payments. It's going to pay interest on loans. So the actual money available in the kitty for government to use to build roads, pay salaries and
it's
stuff
about
like that, 38 or 37 trillion.
It is less. About
It's less.
11, 13.
Eh?
It's about 11, 13.
11, 13?
Yes.
Trillion?
13 trillion.
Yes.
No. I mean the actual government budget available for spending, for paying salaries, for building roads, dams and things like that, on a budget of 54 trillion is about 38 trillion. I can bet my nose on that. It's about 38 or 37 trillion. That's the money available.
So what will you
So
remain
of that,
with if you are
4
betting
trillion,
the nose?
then I die. Of that, 4 trillion is going to UNRWA. This huge agency that is handling a lot of work. So if you come and say, I am going to disband it, you are now going to square one. You're destroying the competencies you have.
So someone picked up your article of 2005, that research piece, went and watched your TED talk of 2006, and said, okay, Andrew was telling us something back then. Let's do it. Now you're saying they're throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
The mistake already had created, you see, this is what I wanted you to understand, Charles. They had actually, from the beginning, they should have begun by transforming the civil service into a much more lean and competent organization. Instead, they went for agencies. But so they started creating pockets of pockets of efficiency in a large sea of incompetence. which made policy coordination very difficult. So there was already a mistake. But now don't compound a mistake with another one, because don't destroy the islands of competence you had
that
created,
you have built.
yeah, that you have built in this sea of incompetence. Don't destroy them. Leverage them and build your future from there.
Let me come to you quickly. The thinking around the creation of these agencies, and I think Andrew uses a good word, agencies of government.
That's General Salim Saleh's word, not mine.
Okay. Yeah, because General Salim Saleh led the process that has created part of this chaos, but also trying to create... because I know that he really wanted UNRWA to go.
Yes.
General Saleh would have wanted UNRWA to go, but he has been defeated now. What was the thing? What went wrong, and how did things go wrong?
Well, Dr. Tango Dai would say the historicity of organization of government or reorganization of government. Just remember, let's walk back where we started, way back in 1986. I know Honorable Semujubu don't want to go there, but that's where we...
Do I have the option? You take me even if I don't want to go.
Everything had collapsed. New people come in, the head of that new group and the big team of that group, I don't think they had a lot of experience in running government. And therefore, the people who made suggestions, how do we get out of a dire situation, recommended, both internal and external forces recommended, the government was bad at running certain things, including paying its own utility bills. You remember we inherited public service which had accumulated bills of electricity, of water, in hotels. In those days, a government official like Ofono, you just travel to Mount Moroto Hotel, you eat, you drink, you sleep. If they are relatives and friends, they also come and eat and drink, and you sign a sheet. And it is sent to Kampala for payment. So, bad manners, people didn't pay. Didn't pay for many services. And I think at that time, if you are desperate, whoever tries to provide a solution, if you don't know, you go with the solutions they are providing. And so we ended up with restructuring government, which led to saying the government cannot do business, so you create a semi-autonomous organization so that it runs more or less like a private enterprise.
Yes.
But politicians had a big say in how. And then also the bureaucratic civil service, because once we started creating agencies and authorities who were creating the policy. They were the civil servants and the politicians. So a civil servant comes up...
Hadn't you somewhat dealt with that in 1992 when you retrenched almost half of the civil service?
The civil servants, they read ahead and they say, since coffee marketing board is going to be removed, or since Ministry of Agriculture is going to be restructured, let us start here. And they recommend themselves. You remember that the people who started them, you send them as the interim staff, and eventually they work their way, they create the qualification for people to occupy those positions, and then they said the bigger part of the problem was remuneration. And that's how we ended up with a squinted remuneration or pay scale, public pay scale structure. And so that's where we are. I think along the way, the leadership of the government lost its way. And then everything ran amok. So wherever there was a problem, somebody comes up and you have heard the president saying, for example, he has said that he actually did not know how the debate and creation of UNRWA came up.
Really?
And yet, UNRWA was created by an act of parliament, which he assented to. I think at some point, people just lost track of what was happening because you trust the ministers, you trust this, you trust that. And so we are where we are. And therefore, the use of the term rationalization I mean, we ended up having three things simultaneously. One, duplication. Two, wastage. Three, deliberate creation of agencies for specific people. You have seen the cotton agency, the cotton, since its creation, one person, and so on and so forth. So people go and create, if I'm a minister and I have a relative, I have a friend, I have a son of my brother, a son of my OB, and I want to place them somewhere, I create an agency and I give them. So those three things compounded, and that's where we are. So rationalization is the right one.
You're suggesting there was no one in charge of these processes?
No, I said we lost our way. I want to be honest. The leader, and I'm using the word leadership, right from the president, the cabinet, parliament over the years. And I mean, it is not just the government agencies. Look at when we said Ugandans were thirsty of democracy and said, let us have an elected parliament, let us give parliament the leeway to run its affairs. What have we ended up with? From 173 elected members of parliament and 39 elected women district representatives. How many do we have today? 529. When there's better technology
and counting,
there is a better communication that you would expect that a member of parliament should be presiding over a larger area because of better infrastructure, better technology, better this, better that. What have we ended up with? We now have parliamentary constituencies which are one sub-county or two sub-counties. I remember I think this was the 8th parliament, when Honorable Tafira was the Minister of Local Government. He went to parliament to request for addition of 6 districts. He came out with 11. Recently, we went to request for, I think, about 5 or 7 constituencies. We came up with 46. So everything has been vulgarized by petty interests. And that now leads me to the ongoing rationalization. It started in the last parliament. We went to Chankwanza after the election of parliament, of the 10th parliament, and the president made this proposal, and we agreed. A committee was set up in the Ministry of Public Service, and we have been back and forth. In the current status, actually, the parliamentary caucus was convened. This matter was tabled by Honorable Mururi Mukasa. The number of agencies and the rationale. And they had initially brought one omnibus bill. The caucus said, no, since many of these agencies were created by different acts of parliament, it is more logical that you bring specific bills to wind them up. So what have we ended up with? But I want to say that even this debate, I don't think it's a real tug of. That's how politics works anyway. It is like a war. You go to a war, there are battles in a war. Within the battle, the engagements. Within engagements, there are skirmishes. There are those skirmishes you will win. There are skirmishes you will lose. The engagements you will win, the engagements you will lose.
And in
a war, there are battles you will win, there are battles you will lose. Now, the government ended up bringing, I think, 38? 38. Out of 38, I think Parliament has so far passed like 23, 25? 23. In favor of what the government wants, what the executive wants. So I think that's a big win. Now we have a few. I think we can take this win for now, go back and now focus. Why have they retained the bigger ones, which have money? And that we can now tie that one with what you were alluding to. Are members of parliament retaining some of these because of backhand deals or what? If you look at Nitayu, for example.
I want to imagine that members of parliament are rational people.
Unfortunately, the experience we have, the evidence we have, the credible evidence we have is that not many of them.
Which credible evidence is that now?
Yeah,
which credible evidence? For example, we can go back to the Hansard. if the minister who's the owner of the agency has given a justification and has studied his agency, what plausible reason does a backbench member of parliament who doesn't have, and we can go back and scrutinize the reasoning, for example.
Isn't this the same minister you talked about who was in cabinet and failed to manage that process right from the beginning?
Exactly, but you see, we have even had cases, by the way, we have even had cases in that parliament where somebody, because for me, by the way, I appear before committees of parliament for different reasons. And we have had cases where somebody, the members of parliament say, but you see, even your own minister came here and threw his or her hands up and said he couldn't defend you. And then they say, you see, the minister told us, I don't understand your language. We have had cases in this rationalization where somebody says, the minister didn't defend us because the minister has been asking for fuel, for foreign trips, for sponsorship, and we declined. So they said, since you have not been speaking our language, I cannot defend you. You guys
speaking the minister's language or the language of members of parliament. Let's bring this discussion.
So now these are allegations. But if you analyze the debate in parliament, the reasoning, you can add 1 + 1 and we'll know
we have members of parliament here. Let them tell us their reasoning for saving some. So you started with about 115 agencies, authorities of government, but once you rejected, especially your faith in the caucus, once you insisted that you are not going to deal with the omnibus bill, and I think the entire parliament rejected the omnibus bill.
Agreed that we would handle them
case by case. Yes. Once you agreed to handle case by case, what is the justification for saving those that you have saved and agreeing to the disbandment of those you have agreed to disband? We can pull out the list and look at what you have saved and what you haven't saved out of the 38.
When a decision is made in parliament, it's not only guided by one thing. Every member of parliament reasons. That's the truth. The people voted, they voted very well. So we have the opportunity to make our independent decisions, even if we have agreed in caucus that we will support the rationalization. When a final question is put, people have a right to make the choice that they want. But before I get to what informed our decision, building on what the foundation on what Andrew said, the mistake is not happening now. The mistake happened at the time of creation of these agencies. So instead of strengthening the government ministries that existed then, government said, okay, now let's do a shortcut, let's create something else and we leave our own ministry. And in creating that something else, then they recruited more people, yet we had already people in these ministries, pay them very well, give them performance indicators, give them money to achieve. Why not achieve? And yet that same action, if it was done at the ministry level, it would have still achieved the purpose. Pay somebody well, give them key performance indicators, and they would still achieve. Now, when you have made such a mistake over the years, and there are people involved in the process of implementation, it's certainly not going to be a easy thing to just say you are closing. That's why we're having this conversation. There is a popular saying that if you want to get to a strong man's house, you must first destroy the strong man. You don't expect the strong man to just allow you to destroy. So in this case, we have the agency is the house, and the strong man are the people involved in those agencies. You don't expect them not to lash at a decision Parliament will make, or if it doesn't come in their favor, there will be that fight. And that's why we are having this conversation, because of that uncomfortable movement. In my personal view, the rationalization idea is a good one for this country. It is a good one because it then gives government opportunity to recruit the right people and then pay them well. The question of pay will no longer be an issue. Using the same budgets we are spending on salary now in the country,
you have
on
failed,
wages,
Honorable
pay them well,
have,
give them key performance indicators.
You have failed to set up a salary commission.
That is the...
That would be another agency outside of Ministry of Public Service. But you have failed to put one.
A salary review commission is something, is a commission that is expected to handle the review process to harmonize. But we can also do rationalization and bring this to halt. Because now if we say we are lifting salaries of everyone, then we will be collecting taxes of Ugandans only to pay salaries for doing nothing. Just like what we did with the creation of these agencies, employ more people, then leave people in ministries, professionals, qualified, doctors, professors in ministries, pay them science scale for doing no work. Because you've taken their work to the agencies. So that's really not fair. So to bring to the question of what informs our decision in Parliament, which I think the public has failed to understand us. What informs our decision in Parliament is the documents that have been delivered to Parliament by the sponsor of the bill. With documents sponsored, most of the bills that did not succeed, either there was a mistake in the certificate of financial implication, they did not compute very well the financial implication, there was a technical mistake, so you couldn't even defend the bill, or the minister submitted the document without proper research on how the work of that agency would be sustained without any break. If it's a critical service, that's how UNRWA got saved. If it's a critical service like a road, something handling roads, are we going to have a breakdown in the road infrastructure in the country because of this rationalization? In the absence of that information, then members now were left to make their decision in terms of what they think works for the country. There are also other risks. In 2022, we rationalized Rural Electrification Agency. We all said yes. We want rationalization. These agencies are taking a lot of our money. 2022, 2023. Before I joined Parliament, REA was connecting in countryside. In my district in Napak when I was there, in our small towns, Matany, where those small towns, REA was there. 2022, no one. 2023, I said, let me now write to the minister. Wrote to the minister, followed up, go and we shall earn or shall sell in team. There's no what. Moreover, even the time of the rationalization, the budget that had been allocated for REA was transferred to the ministry. And then the minister will tell you, you wait till we shall handle. And up to today, no single poll.
You went back to the bureaucracy that you had run away from.
No single poll has been planted. Now, that laid a very bad foundation for rationalization. So when people are reasoning in Parliament in terms of, do we do the same for the road sector? It played a critical role. I think perhaps if the Ministry of Energy had delivered on the electrification in the country, the rationalization process would have been a little easier.
We've seen quite a bit of chaos in the road sector since the debate about the survival of UNRWA began. You look at, I'll give you an example that I am more familiar with. This road section between the Mitiana-Mobende section of the road. I think about 6 years now. By the time you complete working on this, a little bit more than 6 years, by the time you get done with the Mitiana-Mobende road, Mobende Chenjojo will have broken up in 2 pieces, completely.
It's already breaking.
Yeah, it's already breaking. And UNRWA is not sure. Are we still working? Can we engage contractors? Can we pay them? What can we do? What lessons have you learned? And by the time you're making the decisions you're making in Parliament, has there been an actual appreciation of where we came from, where we are, and what is likely to happen?
Do I start with the... Let me start with my general thinking, then I'll end with the question you're asking. When the rationalization came to Parliament, I wrote to the Speaker requesting to have at least a 2-day debate on the principles. And my view in the letter was that once you have agreed on the principles, you will now have the same reason. Actually, the repeal and merger will be a ceremony because you will have agreed on the principle. The speaker did not reply me, and that debate didn't take place. And the point that Ofonopono makes, these MPs have been giving very strong reasons for rationalization, the same reason that apply to every agency. But when it comes to an agency that they want to save those reasons, they don't give them. The duplication, the issues of money. And I said, I mean, does this parliament listen to itself? There are agencies that they rationalize almost without debate. Some sort of a mob that this one must go. And as Ofono noted, the agencies that have a bigger budget and are able to do some work in the constituencies, they are all saved. These smaller ones with nothing to do in the constituencies, they all have gone. They didn't even listen to them because the argument by those who had wanted to keep, for example, the meteorological department, the argument was that don't look at the money that is collected. Look at the importance. You have an airport, you have an agriculture sector, you have this and that. So the meteorological department, don't judge them by the money they collect.
The Meteorological Authority.
Yes, judge them by the service they offer. I was with the Bank of Uganda.
True.
Bank of Uganda, there's an agency they rationalized. I don't know if they succeeded. Along the way, I even lost interest. They were taking registration of microfinance and these smaller things to Bank of Uganda. Bank of Uganda, guys, we are central.
Uganda microfinance.
Microfinance, we were taking it to the Ministry
There
of
is
Finance.
something they were taking there.
But the House,
I'll look at it,
rejected.
something different. Said we are, for God's sake, a central bank. We cannot be running around registering money lenders.
That's the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority.
Something like that.
No, we wanted it to be in the Ministry of Finance, not to Bank of Uganda.
I chaired the committee
But
on
it survived.
COSASE 2014, 2011. My view in our report was that agencies doing the same thing need to be merged. At that time, we looked at the allied health something. Then you had the midwifery and nursing. Then you had dental and medical association. They are all regulating medical professionals. But their budget was about each, maybe about 1 billion. They were unable to operate. And government said we'll really merge them. That time, I think the Honorable Gunda was Minister for Health. When the actual time for merging came, I didn't see them come to Parliament. I looked at the ones dealing with the recruitment of staff, public service, Health Service Commission, something, there are also many. I said, why didn't you merge them? And then you optimize, because you can put them in one building. This financial year, we are finalizing the budget. The biggest item in the budget is servicing debt, which is now at 25 trillion. The second biggest item is wages and salary, which is 7 trillion. When you go down looking at the amount of money we are spending on buying vehicles, servicing them, which comes to about 780 billion. So the amount of money we are spending on people who are working for government is actually more money than money you have available to do roads. When I was speaking about the 4 trillion for ONU, just wages and salary, 7 trillion. When you begin counting issues of vehicle, so the staff, I am finishing my computation. You're spending about 9 trillion shilling on staff, paying them salary, buying them fuel, this and that. The trouble is that we rush things, and Parliament makes it even more problematic because they don't first debate the principles. They are just, we are working like a mob. I was in Kenya recently. Kenya is also discussing its wage bill. The argument in Kenya, and Ruto presided over, I think, a 3-day seminar first to deal with the principles. His big argument in the meeting was that we are now, as a country, employing more support staff than technical. Yet our policy says that we are supposed to have more technical 70%, and then just recently the president appointed RDCs. For every RDC, yes, for every RDC you appoint, there is a driver, there is a guard, there is a secretary. So one person on RDC, 3 support staff. Yet these RDCs buy them laptops. They can drive themselves. I have seen other big people. I mean, throughout his time as a minister, Sendawa was driving himself.
Now you have deputy RDCs, you have assistant RDCs.
Yes.
Assistant deputy RDCs. Is it assistant RDCs or assistant deputy RDCs?
Whichever they are. So if you go to the office of the president, each of those fellows has a brand new pickup, which you are servicing, which you are fueling at 4 million per month.
Which you are repairing, for which you are paying a driver.
And I don't know whether it's Ofono or Andrew who was looking at the administrative structure. The Electoral Commission, in their strategic plan of 2 years, they actually said they need 2.4 trillion. 1.3 trillion is for organizing elections, other costs. So for 2 years, the Electoral Commission is going to spend 2.4 trillion on putting in place an infrastructure of 3.3 million leaders. You have youth councils, 400,000, women councils, 400,000, people with disability, 400,000. So Uganda now elects 3.3 million people.
Supervise how many technical people? All political leaders are supervisors.
It is a mess.
Let's pick this conversation up after a very short commercial break. We'll be right back. Don't miss interesting debate on the media roundtable in the morning on Friday. That panel will be continuing discussions on some of the issues that we tackle here, but some of the other issues that have been running and making headlines during the week. Don't miss it early morning tomorrow. Let's just look at those rationalized. They're represented by the bills that were presented. Like we told you, there are 38 in total so far. We'll find out how many have been saved and how many haven't been saved yet. It is an interesting list to read through. The registration of persons, this is registration of persons, this is Amendment Bill 2024. The Uganda Trypanosomiasis Repeal Bill. What happened to trypanosomiasis? The Agricultural Chemicals Control Amendment Bill. Agricultural chemicals, people have been crying with agricultural chemicals down in Container Village. They don't know who regulates them. There's an agency. But people don't know that what you buy can actually kill the ticks, whether you're the ticks if you're spraying cows or dealing with crop diseases. People have been asking questions around that. The Children Authority, the National Youth Council Authority, the National Youth Authority, I think, there is a council, the National Youth Council, the Persons with Disabilities Council, the National Women's Council, the National Council for Older Persons, the Warehouse Receipt Systems. Was that an authority agency?
It was an agency.
The Free Zones Authority. This one emerged and then somehow kind of quieted. The Uganda Export Promotions Board, the Uganda Wildlife Authority.
Education Center.
Uganda Wildlife Education Center, okay. Yeah. The Uganda Wildlife Conservation Education Center. These were two different.
The zoo.
So the one that was running the zoo and the one that runs, okay. The Uganda National Meteorological Authority, the Uganda National Commission for UNESCO, the Higher Education Students Financing Authority, Commission?
Board.
Okay. The Uganda Registration Services Bureau, the National Government Organizations, the NGO Board. Yeah. The National Library. This one also has the National Planning Authority. How many national libraries still exist, by the way?
National Library.
How many still exist in this country?
Public libraries.
Public libraries.
Do we have any more?
Yes, we do.
The agency is there.
I know the one in Fort Portal.
The one in Fort Portal is still alive. The one in Mbarara, I do not know. Then there is this one on Buganda Road.
Are they funded in any way? Like
no.
the one in Fort Portal there?
You know,
it's the donors who maybe donate things
yes,
to
it was. Donors were picking whatever books they couldn't read anymore and then dumping them there, some of them. The National Population Council, the National Physical Planning Authority. Then you have those that still have some life. The National Agricultural Advisory Services. NADS.
Those are saved.
The Cotton Development Authority. The National Coffee.
UCDA.
This is UCDA,
yes.
Uganda Coffee Development Authority. The Dairy Development Authority, DDA. The National Forest, this is NFA. The National Roads Authority. The Uganda National Roads Authority, UNRA. The Uganda Road Fund. Then these have been withdrawn. These bills were withdrawn. The Constitutional Amendment, we don't have to go into this. No. The Tier 4 microfinance institutions and money lenders, which is
the one that was withdrawn.
UMRA, yeah. And the non-performing assets recovery trust. They're still non-performing assets?
Yes.
That haven't been
the
dealt with?
The remains there.
Okay. And Departed Asians Custodian Board?
Yeah.
Okay. These are still there. Semujo, I took the microphone away from you
yes,
just
so
before you took a break.
So the point I was making
and
that,
I'd put a specific question to you, though you
was
chose to answer
that.
it.
Yes. So if you have you are spending 9 trillion on paying wages and facilitating public employees, you may need to borrow a leaf from Kenya, because they have taken a decision, first of all, that their wage bill will no longer be 30% of their revenue correction. They need to bring it to a certain level. And they are working guided by that. But here, if you look at the budget of last financial year and the budget of this financial year, the wage bill remains the same, 7.2 trillion, even after this rationalization. I don't know whether everybody is going to move with this agency wherever they have taken it and continue earning the same money, and maybe some of them are becoming a department. So the guidelines are not there. So the MPs are behaving like a mob. This one we want, don't touch, leave it. You ask them, they don't have concrete reasons, because even the president and Mwenda and Saleh and Gowi have not guided them. What is it that you wanted to achieve that you're asking MPs to help you with? Because I've said Kenya, they have
guided them or guided us? Because
guided them.
I don't know why he's excluding himself.
Because I think I've been the only one who supported every bill that they brought. I said, me, I want a lean government. That's the policy of the opposition. And everything they brought in parliament, I said I support. But you MPs, you support giving the same reason one agency, in the evening you give the same reason for the other to go. So you have been a bunch of contradiction. But you are not properly,
you have been there too.
You are not properly guided. And then this is undermined by what is taking place within the larger government. As I said, I am finishing a response to the budget. The president himself, last financial year, employees at State House, he had 1,100. They have now grown to 1,300. Every sort of person now is on the payroll of State House. The other day I looked at the new document. Amama Mbabazi is now presidential advisor, 20 million a month. Even secondly, and why am I picking these ones? They are already benefiting under the Presidential Emoluments and Benefits Act. We buy them a house, we buy them a vehicle, we pay them a percentage of what they were earning. I don't know if anyone can restrain Museveni. I looked at the structure of State House. He has even now assembled the staff.
Why don't we first go back to the agencies and authorities?
I am looking at the larger government. You cannot be enlarging the rest of the government. The Electoral Commission is spending 2.4 trillion to conduct election for 3.3 million, and then you're in Parliament pretending that the main reason is duplication. The main reason is that you want to save a lot of money because the wage bill is big. That's the point I make. So they are related. You can't say your agencies are taking a lot of money and then you are appointing other DCs.
Assistant.
Yes.
Assistant
so that's the point.
No,
so coming specifically to the question you asked earlier, I agree with Andrew. I think Kajina is one of the best employees of this government. And that's why that honor has changed. The people that Andrew was talking about that Kajina disbanded, UNRWA had become just a deal-making center. You remember the minister on Katosi and the engineers of UNRWA. In fact, if UNRWA came to be rationalized at that time, I would support it 100%. The only reason now I don't support it is just because of Kajina. But if you are rationalizing UNRWA with Kajina to go and she becomes a minister to run it, I have no problem with it.
And you're running another risk, focusing an entity on an individual.
An individual. Should she resign tomorrow, what will happen to
I'm not saying that in Uganda there is only Kajina. There are other people who are doing well. Part of the trouble you have with the ministries is that you just pick anyone, and that anyone becomes a minister. And then you have a lot of professionals under those people. I don't think professionals are also comfortable to go and work with. I don't want to mention people names, they get angry that these pharaohs are the ones now. I think
we are used to
they are more comfortable working with the colleagues of the same competence and same qualifications in agencies. But I agree, I remember when the NIRA, the bill establishing NIRA was brought to Parliament, I think it was Kakos and I who opposed it. And the argument at that time was, you guys, every bill you bring to Parliament today is creating an agency. And the fellows who were in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, they created the NIRA and went there. Eventually, some of them lost. But they are creating agencies for themselves. When I chaired
to escape the misery pay.
I looked at the salaries of all the agencies. The MDs, even first of all, even within the agencies, you go and meet an MD of UNRWA, of URA, of National Water, they are earning 35, 40 million. And then you have another agency who are earning 10. So the question I was asking government, why don't you pay people according to their qualifications and the work that they are doing? You can't pay someone who is in UNRWA 40 million and another one in Wildlife Authority 10 million. Same qualification, same work.
There was an interesting one, I think things have changed since, at the Uganda Tourism Board. I think before the current head, the previous one was earning, I think, about less than 3 million shillings.
Yeah, so there was no standardization because each agency has its own board and they were determining their own remunerations.
Okay.
So each board went for it completely different. So the argument was standardized, but also for me, taking these agencies back into ministries. First, you need to get competent people to be ministers. Many of these fellows, if I am a professional of something, I'll extremely be uncomfortable to have a supervisor. I'll find a word that is decent.
You're struggling to avoid mentioning names. I can't say.
And two, you need to deal with the issue of remuneration. There are people who not to go and work for the salaries that government is giving the traditional civil servants.
So isn't there a risk that you're going to lose a lot of good people?
That's why I said, and I even said it in Parliament, that deal with the structural issues that are affecting civil service. People who are running away from ministries to go and become commissioners and something in commissions are doing so because of better pay. So if you want people to now migrate back to
or becoming members of Parliament.
If you want people to migrate back to ministries, make them attractive, bring them at the same pay with commissions.
Okay.
And then make sure that people who are political heads of those ministries are not these fellows that you pick on the street and become ministers.
Isaac Sally says, my late old man, this is the son of the late Dr. Kisamba Mugerwa, used to drive himself with no security.
So was Sendaura.
Huh? He says, security guys, because they used to respect government money. But those ones of this generation, they move with sacks of money. That is why they must ever be with security. So the convoy is no longer because of...
Yeah, the Sendaura, I met him many times.
Yes.
He was driving himself.
Yes.
Proud. In fact, I never found Sendaura with a bodyguard. I don't know why.
I don't think I ever.
And Mayanja Kanji. Mayanja Kanji was being driven, but never had a... But well, maybe it was different times.
James Nkojo Kano is in Gulu.
We didn't have your position threatening ministers.
No, I was...
James Nkojo Kano is in Gulu and he says, Right is right even when the majority say it's wrong. The old structures of ministries, agencies, departments, and desks were simpler, cheaper, and more efficient. The external interests are the ones that are pushing for the line of fragmentation of government, of agencies. The few that are necessary can remain, but many are not necessary. Now that Uganda is standing on its own financially, this distortion needs to be reviewed.
But Charles, that is actually wrong.
Yes.
James is wrong. Why he is wrong is that there are certain specialist agencies which were donor supported, like URA, Uganda Investment Authority, a few of them, and they have turned out to be islands of competence. But most of the agencies was a function of government of Uganda, not even supported by donors. And in fact, donors were opposed to it. That is one. The second, the second thing about it is that, you see, what we are seeing here also, should remember, is a political struggle for power. There is a power struggle. Because ministries were actually weakened. Just take the Ministry of Works. If you look at the money we allocate to the sector of infrastructure, especially to do with the roads and bridges, you will find that the ministry may take about 5% of the budget. UNRWA takes 95% of the budget. So people who stay in ministries feel they are living in a desert. Meanwhile, the other guys are swimming in an oasis. So jealousies emerge. So there is a struggle for power to shift power from these specialized agencies back to ministries, because ministers, they also want to be in charge of these resources.
So my question to you would be, actually it's a question I wanted to put to you before. The question is, can you effectively do this rationalization and work and pull through with it? Well, with those inherent contradictions.
I could put it this way. It depends, first of all, the use of specialized agencies to pursue particular strategic aims is something common across government agencies. It's a reform that started in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK in the late 1990s. So it is not something unique to Uganda. You will go to many countries and find that they follow that model of, if there's something you consider highly strategic, you can create a specialized agency with better incentives and manpower to pursue a strategic aim like revenue collection, the investment promotion, tourism promotion. That is one. That is different from where now they proliferate and sit and they become 500 of them. That is one. The second is, now, if you have created such a system, large numbers of them, and now you want to close them, that becomes a matter of the balance of power between the contending political forces. So what we're seeing is a political struggle. So many of these agencies, once you create an institution, it has an inherent, almost genetic desire to perpetuate its own existence.
That's true.
So if you go to parliament, members of parliament, I saw in the newspaper the other day, somebody said they were paying 500 million shillings to members of parliament to save an agency.
No, $500.
$500, okay?
Yes, I think it's story in the Observer.
To every member of parliament to save an agency. Because now people don't want their power to be taken away in these agencies, the access to resources, and their relevance in the country. Because if we say we're going to close 70...
Though the claim has been questioned, there is no evidence to suggest that members of parliament actually received the money.
This is what I'm saying. But you see, it is just reflects to you that whoever is going to make this decision will be playing... what I'm trying to illustrate is not the factual accuracy of the allegation, is to show that this is a power struggle. Just imagine, Charles, you are heading an organization, they want to take it away. When they close it, you lose your job, you lose your power, you lose your status, you lose your privileges, even relevance in the society. So those who head these agencies are going to fight. In fact, for a country that doesn't have many people for jobs, they need to be thinking, where are they going to put all these guys that they are laying off through this rationalization? So what we are seeing now is that what they want to do is the right thing. It is encountering resistance inevitably because the losers are going to resist reform, and the winners are unsure of the benefits that will come from reform, so they are lukewarm. But I should tell you that in every reform process, every reform process will create losers and winners. The costs on the losers are immediate, are felt immediately, so they are certain. They are mobilized to resistance. They solve what in economics we call collective action failure. People are collectively mobilized to defend the status quo. The people who are likely to win from this, tell me who's going to win. There are no clear beneficiaries, so the benefits of this reform are uncertain. So most people will hedge their bets. Why should I be the one sticking out my head as an MP to destroy an agency? Do you get it? So I think that in the balance of forces...
I think I saw an argument that these agencies have also produced a lot of the members of parliament, that many of them are coming from these agencies.
Exactly. So for me, my advice to General Saleh, who has been the driver of this process, is that, General Saleh, you need to put your foot down, because this is a political struggle. And he needs to weigh his weight on it.
Can he afford the political price?
Well, I think that...
When you send people out who have been earning better money than others, you make them unemployed, and you're creating a bigger political...
You want to suggest that rationalization is Saleh's project?
The rationalization, I think
he wrote the paper. He wrote the paper on which he's been driving it.
Of rationalization.
This is a government project.
Michael Chakulaga in Bugerere Kayunga, Ismail Mande in Kavende, Kato Nyansio, Saul Mugasa. You're watching us. I've received your messages. Thank you for sharing those messages. Or you've been itching to come in?
Yes. First of all, I want to respond to Honorable Semuju about ministers and their competence or lack of. I don't know any minister who doesn't have the same constitutional qualification as a member of parliament. If you want to use that argument,
some of them have no qualification.
No, then you as then
some of the ministers who have no qualification.
Then you as members of parliament,
the president called the parliament. Pass this one.
Pass them in error. Therefore, but if you want to use that argument of the lack of competence of members of parliament, then you are, in short, saying we should not even subject government officials to supervision, oversight by members of parliament. Because why would a professor, a technical scientist, appear before Honorable Semuju, who is just a man of letters, a man of newspaper man?
But so if you want,
if you want to use that argument, I think we should not use that argument. No. The argument should be: do we want elected people, popularly elected people through the democracy, to supervise unelected government officials? And I think that's now a given that world over, elected people are the bosses because they represent the general population.
And that's why I want to build my question to you. Yes. You have, he was just giving us the numbers. Over 3 million elected officials. That's supervising how many technical people? Do you need that number? And number
300,000.
Yes, 300,000. Yeah. Number two, if you really wanted to show a commitment towards reformation
that's your payroll.
of the efficiency and effectiveness of government, do you start by rationalizing agencies, or you start by reducing the number of the size of cabinet, for example, or the size of parliament, the size of districts?
Yes.
Where do you start from?
I will come to that, but I was coming to the second argument. If Semuju, I don't know whether it is Mwenda who talks. In this process, there is a clear process of succession. If an agency is wound up in the system of government, and which is backed by the Constitution and so on, there is compensation. The government also in this plan is saying if your agency is, and you cannot be absorbed, or you are not willing to go to work for government, going back to the ministry, you are going to be compensated your due compensation, commensurate with their terms and conditions of service. The first argument would be, can we absorb all of them? Obviously, the government may not absorb all of them, and the ones who want to be absorbed will have their compensation. So it is not as if an agency is wound up, you go home empty-handed. No, that's not how it is going to work. And the government has made this, I think, it is in the floor of parliament. Yeah. Now, Danos talked about the politics of it. We usually say, who will bail the cat? We all know, all the rats know that there is a cat in this room. But which rat is willing to go and bail the cat? So that's the question you are asking.
Because when the cat, that's what planning. That how do we know that the cat is coming?
We all agree that Parliament has become humongous. In fact, you can even say humongously useless, because the quality, there's the number of people reflect, or does the quality of debate in Parliament or the quality of debate in Cabinet reflect the numbers? Certainly not. But if you are dealing with politics, you don't go where you are certain you are going to fail. You first go to where you are likely to win. So in the assessment of government, this is what my understanding is, that we can win by reforming gradually where we can have wins. Then slowly you can go back and say, Mr. President, now that we have rationalized agencies, do you really need 82 ministers who yourself, by the way, you have said sleep? Isn't that the word of the president? He has said so, not once, not twice, many times. So we can now say, and particularly Parliament can go and say, Mr. President, we have wound up a number of agencies. Do you actually need 82 ministers?
Let me use what you just used. Let me use exactly what you just used. Who will bail the cat? Who do you see? If you offend Opondo,
members, I'm now trying to bail the cat.
If you offend Opondo, can't walk to your boss, whom you interact with regularly, and tell him, Your Excellency,
Charles,
do you really need 82 ministers?
Charles,
yes.
I don't know if you have been reading what I write. I am now attempting to bail the cat. On this show, I'm trying to tell the president, because I believe he's watching. If he's not watching physically, his system is watching for him to say, Mr. President, your own spokesperson is saying, do we really need 82 members of cabinet, or we can do with the less? We can do with the less, we can balance quality and political balancing. Do we actually need 212 presidential advisors who actually don't advise you, but the contrary, you are the one who advises them? Do we need 529 members of parliament for whom we cannot even provide sufficient sitting space? Do we need them?
Parliament is being, the chamber is being expanded.
Yes.
190 billion.
Yes. Do we need that? And so, eventually, this debate we may not be successful tomorrow. From the ministers I speak to, I understand that in the cabinet now, by the way, there is some conversation beginning to gain ground that maybe we actually need to find a formula to accommodate democracy and a smaller parliament. When shall we achieve that is a matter of time, and I think eventually we may reach a point and say, members of parliament may come into realization and say, do we actually need to continue expanding? Unfortunately,
but MPs will say we reduce parliament.
No, no. We can get, Semuju the other day said that we need zero fleet.
Yes.
I don't know, since that time Semuju made that proposal.
I moved the motion.
Yeah, no, you moved.
Yes.
Have you gained traction? Has your suggestion gained traction or not?
Can it gain traction?
So the question now becomes, what is the kind of politics we are having? We have people who pay lip service. I don't agree with Honorable Semuju who says that, you see, the opposition wants rationalization. Have we had the opposition speaking rationalization in this debate?
No, they actually, many are supporting agencies to stay.
To stay.
Yes.
So the type of the politicians we elect in parliament, in the councils, we appoint as RDCs, are not, in my assessment, the ones who stand for what they say.
Okay.
They say one thing and leave other things. And so we are in for a long haul. But that long haul, Ugandans shouldn't give up. Time is going to come when probably President Museveni is not the president. At that point, we can say maybe there will be, but going by what is going on, you look at FDC previously where Semuju was.
He's still there.
Or, nope, all of them said we want a lean government. But look at their shadow government. Is it lean?
Yeah. Shadow cabinet is small.
No, it is small because you are few in numbers.
No, we are not.
No.
We are 110.
You are few in numbers. When they say we want to be frugal, let us look at the debate in Parliament. When we say we want to be frugal, do the behavior of members of the opposition indicate people who are actually interested in frugality, especially when they are using public resources?
Government says it wants to be frugal. Does appointment of 300 assistant RDCs,
obviously not.
Is that evidence of frugality?
Because
an attempt
the
at frugality?
president himself has said, can we be frugal?
Mm-hmm.
But does his practice, particularly the one you have cited, does it show? Do we need? And so that's the debate we must continue. The only fault I can have is the NRM, which is the vanguard, which is the leading group. Do we have sufficient debate internally? And I suspect when you say pulling ropes over rationalization, my understanding, my appreciation is that there hasn't been sufficient debate in the caucus on the principle for rationalization, but also which one should we start with.
Okay.
And for me, I would call our members of the caucus, please, particularly led by the chief whip, who is the chair of the caucus, can we create more time and space for a vigorous, free debate inside? But it appears to me that members of NRM in parliament and in the cabinet and even outside, we want to look over our shoulders. We want to second guess what is the president going to think before he says something.
Okay.
Now we need to increase to multiply the number of people who can speak with discipline, with facts, without vulgarity within the NRM.
Okay.
To face the chief.
I have a message here. Any MP who claims to have received $500 should not be given attention if they do not declare the source of that money and declare that money to the IGG, or at least hand it over to the journalist. I don't know why this person says it should be handed over to the journalist. Why receive it in the first place? Such people make outlandish statements just to get media attention.
Charles.
Yes.
I'm sorry to intervene.
Yes, sure.
I know we would want, it is good to speak with the evidence, but I think we need to help our viewers. You, Semuju, Mwenda here and I, we are journalists. We covered Parliament. I covered the National Resistance Council, 1990 to 1998, as a political reporter. I can speak on authority that in NRSC, in CA, in the 6th Parliament, which I covered, money exchanged hands. I used to sit in the park chaired by Adiebo, park chaired by Teddy Wamusi, park chaired by Waswa Kaluvo. And I would see civil servants being questioned by members of park. And when we got the corridor, a civil servant approaches you and says, you are the judge who sits with these people. Can you help me approach them? So some of these allegations are not without basis.
Okay.
And when you hear the leadership in Parliament saying, we want to sue the observer, I would really wish that they sue the observer. And we see whether they can win that case. I think it is just a scarecrow tactic that the bad image already of Parliament shouldn't continue to be dragged. But for me, I think there's no smoke without fire. The only question we can say, what is the source of the fire?
Okay. Please find out from Honorable Semuju how he rates of Honopondo in competence skill ladder. Could he be a competent minister in the eyes of the honorable member?
Certainly will. I have said so before.
Ismail Mande, I said I appreciated you watching the show from Kabende. This one comes back and says, rationalization is not genocide. It is about efficiency, efficient service delivery of government.
But when they said it, they started it with Saleh and Gori.
Mr. Chris Tushabe is watching us from Iruhur. I think he says, creation of the agencies was admission by government that they could not manage corruption in the ministries. However, some agencies like UNRWA have really performed well and justified their creation. UEB would never have been touched. Privatization of such services, including banks, except Diame, was wrong. Except Diame was wrong. Our funders betrayed us. Solomon Webalarari, thank you for watching the show. Some says all those agencies need to be taken off. Maybe apart from UNRWA, the rest are just consuming taxpayers' money for nothing. Public library in Fort Portal is more of a reading room to students during holidays. Outdated old books, the only current thing they can afford is a copy of the newspapers, New Vision, Daily Monitor. Then 3.3 million leaders, for sure. Why all this number, meaning in 10 years, we shall be having 10 million leaders? The system has a lot of loopholes. Andrew Mwenda was smart in his submission. Something went wrong from the birth of those agencies. Sami calls him, Sami Eto in Fort Portal. Honorable Nakuti, kindly allow me, let's take a quick break so I can give you enough time to submit. We'll be right back.
NBS Frontline.
Realistically, can this rationalization work? Will it work? Someone says, Ofono Pondo exhibits brilliant ideas on this show. I would love to learn from him what he tells the president on the occasions he meets him. What do you say to this person?
Those are kind of discussions. You see, we practice what we call democratic centralism. When we go, you can have a debate. But when your idea is defeated or others triumph, you follow theirs. And we try as much as you follow what has been agreed on. What has been agreed on that we should rationalize. Now, if we are defeated by Parliament, we can no longer go on the street and start crying. We say, no, we have lost that half the battle. We shall fight tomorrow.
Okay.
And that's why I told you that we are going to have about 7 organizations kept. We shall go back and probably rethink and bring back
the bills.
And then have a pointed argument why maybe they were saved in error.
Okay.
And we think we have capability to persuade members of Parliament to agree with us on another few of them as time goes by.
Okay, I'm keen to bring in Honorable Nakuti. But let me take a message. The spirit behind rationalization was to reduce government expenditure. The medical councils, for example, generate their own funds and have no bearing on the consolidated fund. That's the reason why they were left intact. The argument for UNRWA, NITAU, is that they are critical in socio-economic transformation, and therefore, returning them to mainstream government ministries will impede the progress of road construction and internet connectivity, respectively. This is a message from the Member of Parliament for Fort Portal City North, also Member of Parliament, also Minister of State in charge of the Honourable Margaret Mohanga. No, the Honourable Margaret Mohanga.
For not knowing
sorry, I was missing that.
You can't remember easily the name of your Member of Parliament.
No. I know the name of my Member of Parliament. I know the constituency. Honourable Nakuti.
Yes.
Are we going simply through motions in this rationalization exercise? What is the practicality that it will actually work?
But it is already working.
No,
actually,
you can order agencies to fold reports to ministries. Will that make service delivery better? You used an example. Rural Electrification Agency.
Yes.
Since it left,
It is yet to deliver. But it is not enough example for us to say that rationalization will not work. It's important to give it a chance and allow the ministries to prove. First of all, I told you we have technical staff in the ministry who don't have what to do. And yet government is paying salaries and salaries.
Now you have picked a whole other group of technically competent people from an agency, from an authority, and brought them back to the ministry.
But they were in the ministries before.
They were in the ministries
before. They went to the agencies.
Yes. But they were replaced when they left the ministry.
Yeah, they are just returning to their old bases.
No, when they replaced.
They even know where they are going back to. And I think that is where the fight is now. Because they know that where they are going back to, the salary might not be the same as the other one. But in terms of outputs, the work that these people are doing in the agencies, they can actually do in the ministry if they wanted. So
if they wanted,
to deliver, if there was that intention that you really want, you can do it. What makes an engineer in UNRWA excel more than an engineer he left at the ministry? There is no result.
Let me read for you. Let me read for her a message just before before she concludes, and then you come in. A civil service still observing colonial things like wearing suits and talking without results cannot cause transformation. Public service ministry cares more about how public servants dress than what they do. Can you imagine that in our public service, you are a performer if you just follow procedures without any results? Come early morning, dress well, clock in, take tea, attend a meeting without fail, without contributing anything. You're a good civil servant.
Yes. But that can be transformed. If we give them performance indicators, we give them outputs to achieve, we pay them well and supervise them, be able to terminate, remove the pension and permanent and pensionable. People will work and deliver. For me, I am a believer in a lean structure, but which is delivering, not in making government the only employer for everyone. So the problem we have in Uganda is actually unemployment. Because there are no jobs. The private sector is not strong enough to accommodate everybody. So everyone wants to be employed within a government system. And that is where the problem is. So if the employees of the agencies are fearing that they will not find where to fit, then they will definitely fight back to find a space for themselves. Probably the allegations of bribery are coming along that line of people whose agencies have been rationalized, and now they must mudsling everybody else and say because we did not give money or another agency might have given money. That's why our agency got rationalized. It's not even about the agency anymore. It's about my job.
Yes.
That's how I lost my job. So the unemployment problem in Uganda, we need to address it, to address the question of wastage, or making government look.
You are in parliament debating rationalization of these agencies. I imagine that part of the justification was make government leaner. You're also discussing the question of employment. Where are you going to put these people?
Exactly. Some will be absorbed in the ministry. Some will actually not have a job. That's the truth. According to the documents.
It does.
It does, because you have made somebody lose a livelihood. That's very, very important.
You made them redundant.
You're making somebody redundant. Yes, you will give them a one-off package, but it's not compared to a salary that someone will get for a lifetime. So you don't expect that person not to fight.
Okay.
So the question of unemployment, in my view, would be addressed like this. When we have the ministries functioning, delivering on the roads our people want, on the electricity, on all the social services that Uganda wants.
Why are we discussing a hypothetical situation when we live in this country? Why are we discussing
because it can work.
You see,
it can work.
Charles,
yes, Andrew, I need them to come in.
I've been at the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and I am impressed, and I know many people are. I don't want the militarization of public service, but the military people have done very well in the passport sector there. You can see a real difference.
But they're efficient, and they're not an agency.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It is possible to get ministries to work when you get the right people. But when you begin picking these people that Fonopono's boss picks from streets to go and run the ministry, they just are going to, go to that department of passports today and compare it with the same department 5 years ago.
There's a big difference. There's a big difference.
Let me have Andrew come in.
What I think is what we lack in Uganda is an objective way to test a policy. And I think that Semuju had raised this issue, that Kenya said, okay, we want to cap our total government spending as a share of revenue. So I want to look at this, because sometimes government of Uganda assumes that it is spending too much on public sector wages, and I feel, on what basis are you saying it's too much? So I was just trying to calculate numbers. So one objective way to test whether government of Uganda is bloated is to look at the necessary level of government employees per 100 citizens. So the sub-Saharan African average is about 2%. Public sector employees per 100 citizens. Latin America is about 3.5%. The Middle East and North Africa is about 4%. Asia Pacific is 2.4%. Uganda is 1.1%. So
it's small.
It's very small.
So where are we?
1.1% public, because we have a population of about 47 million, and we have public sector employees at 483,000. The other way is to look at the ratio of public sector wages to GDP. Normally, the standard they give you should not exceed 7%. Ghana is 11.3%, Kenya is 12.2%, Uganda is 4%. So public sector wages as a percentage of our GDP is 58 billion.
Because everybody appreciates public service workers, civil servants are paid poorly in this country.
Well, but
that's part of the reason.
No, but our argument was that it is bloated. I used the first I used is numbers.
Yes.
Per 1,000. Uganda has 2% or 2 public sector employees per 100 citizens. And when you come to money, ratio to GDP is about 4%. Now, if you come, another way to look at it is the ratio of total government wages to revenue. Uganda's revenue this financial year is about 30 trillion. The revenue is 29.7, roughly 30.
You round it off.
Yes. When they close, we will know.
The actual correction.
But the month there is not yet ended.
I'm talking about last financial year.
This but I'm saying this financial year
is 20 trillion collected so far.
So our budgets that they are going to collect 30 trillion, 29.7 trillion. Let's see if it happens. And public sector wages are 7.2 trillion.
Yes.
That's about 22%.
Yes.
Now I can give you the other countries. For example, if you look at they normally say your total, the ratio of your total
public sector wages?
Yes, to
your
total
GDP?
revenue. No,
total revenue. Okay.
GDP should not exceed 7%. Uganda is at 4%. But to your own revenue, because you may be borrowing, it should not exceed 30%. So you find that Uganda is about 23.5%, Ghana is about 41%, Kenya is 38%, Ivory Coast is 45.5%. These are democracies. So, in other words, Uganda actually has a much better fiscal system, although we sit here and say the government is bloated. So, with 7,500 ministers, 10,000 presidential advisors, and whatever it is, actually public sector wages in Uganda comparatively across the world, even in terms of absolute numbers of employees, the wages they are paid shows a very good fiscal regime.
Okay.
So maybe the best way to address it is to follow what Semuju had said. Kenya said they had gone to 52%. We need to cap it at 30.
Yes.
So maybe Semuju in parliament, you should say Uganda is still at 23. And we haven't grown from that 23. Actually, we have declined from 54. 10 years ago, Uganda was spending 25.4% of total tax revenue on wages. Now it's spending about 23.5%. It has come down.
We're continuing this.
But I think yes. That there was something.
We're continuing this conversation.
We can set these standards, and therefore,
gentlemen and lady, Honorable Semuju, just a minute.
May not be covered by the argument you make. It's also the quality and competence. As I said, Kenya said we must now employ 70% technical, and then 30% support staff. I think in Uganda we are where Kenya is. They want to move from there.
We're continuing this conversation on Afro Mobile. Jimmy Kiberu.
NBS Frontline.